من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We have been discussing the Quranic principle which describes the nature of the Islamic Ummah, the nature of our religion and our religious obligation which each and every one of us is responsible for and each and every one of us shoulders. And it is only possible for us to be able to practice Islam individually and to honor the message of Islam if we give importance to the community and to those who are around us. I cannot be a Muslim as an individual. Now, there is a misunderstanding about this, which some people within the Shi'i community and within the Sunni community and within other schools of thought within Islam, which they have. I want to clarify that miscommunication or that misunderstanding. When we say that Islam is a religion of community, when we say that Islam is a religion that requires us to give importance to our loyalty and our belonging to a larger group, we are not speaking exclusively or even primarily of a political identity or loyalty. It doesn't mean that we have to play politics in order to establish a Muslim community. That is one of the singular mistakes that is made by those who overemphasize the political dimension of Islam and forget that all of those political goals of Islam, and Islam does have goals for our society and for our politics and even for our international order and relationship between nations and countries and religions. Even for that international order, Islam does have moral principles and guidelines that we are to believe in and we are to try to establish. But all of that is based upon the spiritual and the moral and the ethical teachings of the religion. There is a hadith attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. There is a narration, and this is found in a very reliable and a respected Sunni book of Hadith, Kitab al-Fitan, and it is also found in Shi'i sources. I believe the author of Kitab al-Fitan is Nu'aym ibn Hammad, one of the shuyukh or the teachers of al-Bukhari. It's a well-respected source. The hadith is also found in some of the compilations of the sayings of Ahlul Bayt. It's circulating widely now. You may have heard it. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he prophesied, he foretold that there will be a group of people who will work and who will try to bring people together under one government. And the word used by the Imam in the hadith attributed to him is Hum Ashabud Dawla. They are the people of a Dawla. And the Imam criticizes them because that focus on the external and on the exterior and on the superficial is what undermines Islam from within. Now, the word dawla was not used in the sense that it is used in modern Arabic or Persian or Urdu today. It has a connotation in many Islamic languages, but this reality of people focusing on the outward and on the superficial, that was something which has always been present within Islam. If there is a question that people sometimes have about the actions of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam after the death of the Prophet, Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. Now there are different opinions that exist within the Muslim Ummah. The followers of Ahlul Bayt believe that the leadership of the Muslim community in a comprehensive sense, it belonged to Imam Ali. That was his right, and it was delegated to him on the basis of his worthiness and his knowledge by the Prophet according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other opinions that are held by different schools of thought within Islam. However, as I mentioned earlier, all of the Muslims agree that the Prophet gave a very special rank to his Ahlul Bayt, and Amir al-Mu'mineen was the head of Ahlul Bayt after the Prophet. This is not a matter of dispute. Even Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, who was the uncle of the Prophet, and by Arab tribal custom was in a senior position, by age was older and was senior to Imam Ali. As history reports, he said to Imam Ali, "Give me your hand that I will do bay'ah to you." No Muslim has said, historian or scholar, that there was ever an assumption that among Ahlul Bayt, Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib would have been the head. Imam Ali was recognized as the head of Ahlul Bayt. The question comes then, that why did Imam Ali alayhi salam not more actively and aggressively assert his claim to the leadership of the Muslim Ummah after the Prophet? If he had that right, however it may be construed, but why was it not more aggressively or actively asserted? If we think of Islam in political terms, the question comes up. If I have a political claim, then either I will concede the election or I will contest the election. But by not contesting the result, that is in itself a concession. But when we look at Islam from a moral and a religious perspective, where politics is part of our moral understanding of the religion, then there doesn't seem to be any contradiction. What was paramount in the eyes of Amir al-Mu'mineen was the greater interest of the Muslim Ummah, the unity and the cohesiveness of the Ummah. Where the Ummah's interests were served, by asserting his right, then Amir al-Mu'mineen did assert his right. And Sunni and Shia will agree that even though the stances of Imam Ali resulted in hundreds of people dying in the Battle of Jamal, and thousands of people dying in the Battle of Siffin, and hundreds of people dying in the Battle of Nahrawan, all Sunnis and all Shia will agree that Imam Ali alayhi salam was right in all three of those battles, and he was not wrong and not responsible for any one drop of those thousands of people whose blood was shed on either side of any of those battles. That agreement is because Amir al-Mu'mineen made that decision to assert his right and to fight against his opponents in Jamal, to fight against Muawiyah in Siffin, and to fight against the Khawarij in Nahrawan, because that was in the greater interest of Islam and of the Muslim community. And where Amir al-Mu'mineen did not assert his right, it was the same calculation and the same logic which informed his decision. And so the conclusion that I want us to remember is that regardless of the ups and downs that the Muslim Ummah might go through, this is a period of tension. Inshallah, soon we will have many of these disagreements, many of these difficulties be a memory and they will be behind us. And then in the future, whenever Allah tests the Ummah again, it may be soon, it may be after many years, there will be periods of hardship, of trial, of ill will that exist within the community. This is the nature of every family, it is the nature of every community. Always remember that there is no dividing line within the Ummah between Sunni and Shia, between different groups who call themselves Ahlul Sunnah, between different groups who call themselves Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Those are not the red lines or the dividing lines of the Ummah. There is only one primary dividing line within the Muslim Ummah. There is only one border that we need to be conscious of and we need to be on guard against. And that dividing line is those who put the Ummah first and those who do not put the Ummah first. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Allah says that He has created the Muslims as one Ummah. That one Ummah means that if I am a Sunni and I believe that we can only understand our Islamic obligations by referring to his companions as a collective, and that all of those companions are adil and they are just, and that whatever hadith they narrate, they are accurate, then that is my means of approaching the Sunnah of the Prophet. Every Muslim should respect this means that I have of approaching the Sunnah of the Prophet, even if they disagree with some details. No Muslim will disagree about the companions, because every Muslim will go through those companions whom they consider to be authentically preserving the teachings of the Prophet. There is no dispute between Shia and between Sunni about the companions of the Prophet. And if you look at Nahj al-Balagha, then you will find praise of Ashabu Muhammad, which you will not be able to find in many other books of hadith or many other sources. But yes, there will be differences about which of the Sahaba, which of the companions best preserved the teachings of the Prophet. So every Muslim should respect that. And I should also respect if another Muslim says that they have a different means which they consider to be more accurate, more effective in accessing the teachings and the religion of the Prophet of Islam. But what is important is that we do not forget that the Sahaba are a means by which Muslims will access the teachings of the Prophet. Ahlul Bayt have the role of preserving the teachings of the Prophet. And their role can only be fulfilled. Those teachings of the Prophet can only be accessed and they can only be implemented if the Ummah is in a healthy state. But if two members of the Muslim Ummah can only talk to one another cordially when they are in New York for a UN General Assembly, they can never meet together and talk on their own terms, then neither the teachings preserved by the Sahaba will be honored, nor the teachings preserved by any one of the Sahaba, nor the teachings preserved by Ahlul Bayt will be able to be honored or be able to be implemented. And that is an essential point. That for the health and for the well-being of the Muslim Ummah, the red line and the border is those who have respect for the other members of the Ummah and those who do not have respect for other members of the Ummah. Those who are quick to call their opponents kafir and mushrik and outside of the fold of Islam and outside of the fold of humanity, they are the ones whom Sunni and Shia and all of the schools of thought within Islam should unite to condemn and say that if you are going to declare a Muslim kafir, if you are going to declare somebody who says La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah kafir, then it is you who are outside of the community, but not any one of those groups who are part of the Muslim family. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We will see in the story of Karbala how it was that Imam Hussein ﷺ dealt with people who were from different schools of thought, and the gentleness and the respect with which he invited them, and the respect with which he dealt with their responses. That part of the story of Karbala is something that is a very meaningful reminder to all of us that remembrance of Ashura and remembrance of Imam Hussein is always to be done in such a way that it can bring the Ummah together. Yes, it should clarify what is wrong with certain conceptions of Islam, and how there are certain conceptions of Islam that can drive Muslims away, and that can even drive some people to reject the Prophet and to reject God and belief in God altogether, as has happened in history. But the message of Karbala is something which is to bring us together. So the practice of the Prophet was always to have that kind of spirit of uniting, of bringing people together. He brought a religion that invited people to come together at different times. We mentioned yesterday that during our daily prayers, the best prayer we can do is one that is in congregation. When it comes to our meals, كَانَ أَحَبُّ الطَّعَامِ إِلَى النَّبِي الضَّفَفِ. The best meal for the Prophet was one in which there were many people who had joined together to eat that meal. And there is a sunnah which was practiced by the Prophet, which is the sunnah of a walima. Walima is something which is a sunnah of the Prophet, and it was a recommended act in Islam. We generally associate the word walima with a marriage, a wedding. But in reality, the sunnah is in 5 different things. And these are 5 things that are times of happiness for the Muslim Ummah. Whenever we have something good that happens to us, our first thought should be, how can I include others in my happiness? How can I inform them about it, ask for their prayers, and allow them also to participate in that good deed? So of those different times when it is recommended for a Muslim to invite others to a walima, one is marriage. When there is a marriage, it is recommended to invite family, community members, neighbors, and have them partake in that happiness, share in that happiness. Another is at the time when a person has a child. When a child is born, then it is recommended also to have a walima. Now, we will not necessarily consider that to be a walima, but whatever term is used in a hadith, the term walima was used. Invite people and have them share in that happiness, share in that joy. When you do an aqiqah, when there is an aqiqah, when you are going to now, in a sense, ask Allah to protect materially and spiritually your child. This is a time to invite others also and ask them to join hands in happiness and also in dua. And an aqiqah is a very important thing. There are ahadith that tell us that if a person did not have an aqiqah done for him or her, then when you are an adult and you have your own property, do your own aqiqah. It is that much of an important sunnah and something which is important in preserving our blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers on us to keep us protected from all evil and all harm. So in marriage, when there is a child born to a person, when it is the time for an aqiqah, when a person moves into a new house or purchases a new house, that is also a time to invite the community, and we might want to give them a tour and share a meal with them. That is a time when it is recommended to also invite others. And when a person returns from Hajj, this one is in particular a spiritual blessing, but the journey to Hajj is also not meant in Islam to be an individual journey. The community has a responsibility. If somebody from my community is going for Hajj, then I have a responsibility to go to them and ask them, they're going to be gone for some time. Do their family, do their dependents, do any of their other affairs need any kind of caretaking? Is there something that I can do? By going and making that request, and then looking after their dependents and looking after their affairs while they are gone, I am partaking in that journey of Hajj. And when a person goes for Hajj, then I can't say that, well, I'm doing this Hajj because I had a nadr. I'm going for this Hajj because I had a vow. I have an obligation. When you go for Hajj, then you want to make sure that you are bearing your community in mind, in your du'as while you are there, and also when you return, invite them. Tell them about your journey and about your experiences. Remind them that you were making dua for them at those sacred sites. And in this way, encourage people also to plan for and look forward to the journey of Hajj. There is a sunnah that existed among the companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. And this is a sunnah which it would be very beautiful if in our communities we could revive it. It does exist in some limited form in some of our families, but the sunnah as it was present in the time of the imams, it reminds us of a different value system which has been all but lost in our time. We live in a very selfish time. We live in a time when we think about ourselves, and we might think about our children, and we think about our descendants, but we don't really have any kind of a sense of obligation towards the community. There were some companions of our imams who were well off. Their practice was that every single year they would set aside the amount of money that was required for the journey of Hajj. Every single year. And when the time came, depending on how far they lived from Hijaz, it might be in the Shahe Ramadan, it might be after the month of Ramadan, they would say that I can make the journey myself this year. If they could make the journey, then they would go and they would perform Hajj. And if they were not going to be able to go and they had fulfilled their obligation, if Hajj is an obligation, then I can't postpone it. I can't say that next year there will be a long weekend. Next year the weather will be better. If Hajj is an obligation, then I should go as soon as I am able to do so. But if they have fulfilled their obligation, then they would say, I've already set aside the money. I am not going to be able to go because of my other affairs, because of my business, because of my health, for whatever reason. So I will send somebody in my place to do Hajj. And so those who could afford it, among the companions of our Imams, people like Ali ibn Yaqteen, a very noble companion of our seventh Imam, Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. At least one person would go for Hajj every year on behalf of that person. Now, the way that this exists within our own communities is that sometimes we have people who do have a relative, maybe a parent, maybe an aunt, maybe an uncle, somebody who showed them a great deal of kindness, helped them when they were young, and they say that I want to repay them and I am planning on sending them for Hajj. Sometimes people, they come and they ask ulama, what are the obligations that we have? How should we do this in a way that is going to fulfill our obligations? This is a very good habit, and it is a very noble gift that you can give for somebody, to offer them a trip for Hajj, to offer them a trip for Umrah, or to offer them a trip for Ziyarah. But it's something that we should do not just for somebody who has done me a favor, because that is also just a repayment for something that has been done. But I should also think of this as one way of honoring the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should give me pride that I have contributed to a person going for Hajj, even if that person is not a relative of mine, even if that person might not be very familiar to me directly. And there are many ways that we can do that. We can set aside that money over a period of several years. And so rather than doing that every year, I can say that, well, every 3 years or every 5 years, I will send somebody to do Hajj on my behalf. Or it could be Umrah, or it could be a trip for Ziyarah. We can get together with 5 or 7 or 10 or 15 of our community members, any number, and say that all of us will get together and we will sponsor a needy member of our community, maybe a lady who just lost her husband and is going through the difficulty of widowhood, maybe an elderly man who has lost his wife and is dealing with that sadness, or other people who are going through phases of their life where the ability to go for Hajj would be a source of reassurance for them. Strengthen their faith, strengthen them emotionally, get together and offer them that gift. So this was a sunnah of the companions of our Imams. And it was a practice, and there can be no greater pride for a Muslim community to honor the teaching of Hajj in such a way that we are always making arrangements to take part in somebody's journey for Hajj, even if my share might only be a small part of that preparation. It could be financial, or it could be by helping a Haji in some other way. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That is a sunnah which it would be good if we could revive. These are some of the ways in which Islam has told us that we are to think of a communal responsibility. These particular types of teachings, they often make no sense to a modern mind. They make no sense to us in our cultural context, because we're thinking about efficiency. We're thinking about the return on the dollar. We're thinking on an investment that we want to see a material return on. But if you examine the ahadith of Hajj, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that He doesn't like you to spend a great deal on your material comfort and your preparations except in the journey of Hajj. Spend as much as you can during Hajj on yourself and on your traveling companions. The return on investment that we as a believer are seeking is not always a financial return on investment. It's not always going to be a percentage on the dollar that we give in. Sometimes we give and we grant out of a love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the return also comes because Allah responds to our devotion and to our love, not in a material sense. Now I want to move on. When we say that Islam is a religion that gives importance to community, then what is the importance of solitude in Islam? Is everything to be done in community? Is everything to be done in public? There is a general principle that we should remember. According to a hadith